Hi everyone, and welcome to our Sunday evening fireside chat here on Wild Earth Safari. This is a time when we sit around the fire. We're about to be cooking on the fire too. I don't know whether fireside chat gives us the opportunity to cook on the fire, or whether it's we make a plan to cook on the fire and it gives us an opportunity to have a fireside chat. Whichever way it goes, it's Sunday evening and it's time to come and have a chat with you. And maybe we'll talk about a little bit about what's happened in the last week. As you can see, I don't have a chair next to me because I don't have anybody to talk to except all of you. And I'd like to talk to all of you, and so I've got a little earpiece in my ear. And by all means, please send in some questions or anything you want to talk about here on questions at wildearthsafari.tv. And we'll have some time a little bit later. There's not much in my head that I want to talk about. Normally it all comes to me while I'm chatting to you. But we can talk about what we've seen in the last week. It's been quite exciting. We've had quite a variety of things. I can't even remember where the week started, if I have to think about going back to last Sunday. Excuse me. And thinking about the things that we've seen. I know we've had some really wonderful elephant sightings. One thing that comes to mind with the elephants, so we had a Buffelshoek Dam just recently in the morning, when they all went to the other side of the dam, and we had a beautiful reflection of them in the water as they were drinking. But I think that I'd say that maybe the highlight of the week, we've had two pretty amazing highlights of the week. There was one day that we saw a little bit of Karula. It was the end of drive, and we were coming back on Central Road. We just passed Gowrie Cutline. Sorry, my maths is wrong. I said two, but there's more than two. But we were coming past Gowrie Cutline on Central Road, and we were like minutes away from closing the end of drive. And I was trying to get to Gowrie Dam so we could stop at Gowrie Dam and I could say goodbye to everybody. And lo and behold, there in the road were some drag marks. And it turned out that as we followed the drag marks, we caught up with Karula dragging a duiker into a drainage line just near the dam. And we managed to see her for a short while. We managed to get ourselves into that little spot and we managed to watch her for a while. But we didn't see the cubs. But we did see the cubs on their own. Supposedly Karula was with them further up on Vuyatela Access Road, and we saw the two youngsters. Karula, I think at that time that we got there were two other vehicles from Cheetah Plains there, so we didn't get to see Karula, but we did see the cubs. Not a great sighting, but it was just wonderful to catch up with them again. But I think the crown was finding them at Gowrie Dam just the other morning, and it was, for me, it was one of those really classic finding the leopard stories where we were driving up towards Gowrie Dam earlier on in the morning. We had found some tracks, and funnily enough, I'd found tracks of a young male, which I thought was either Mishu or Induna, and there had seemed to be a lot of tracks too. There were tracks of a female. There were a lot of tracks at that junction with Philemon's Cutline, or rather Philemon's Dip, and the road that we call Wahlberg's Nest that runs down to Twin Dams Road. It's right on the southern end of the big open area that we call Quarantine. And there were a lot of tracks there, and I even mentioned at the time that it looked like there was a leap of leopards hanging around. There were also zigzag marks in the sand from the larva of a dung beetle, the larva of a scarab, and I had found the scarab, and I put it in a matchbox, and somehow the scarab actually got loose, and I got to dig through the jigger to find the scarab, because I don't think it's going to chew through the jigger, or rather the gunda. But I do want to find it because I'd like to keep it. I'd like to watch as it goes from larva into pupa, and then it's an amazing thing to see how an insect almost breaks its entire body down. Every single cell breaks down into a mush, and then it reconstitutes itself as something else. And it's almost something out of science fiction, and I think this is something that has fascinated me about insects from a very, very young age. I know I'm digressing, but what would it be without me digressing from leopards to dung beetles? But I'm hoping to find this larva, and I'm hoping to maybe take some photographs of a sequence of how it looks as a larva, and what we would call the final instar stage of the larva, as it goes into pupa and then eventually turns into a dung beetle, and then emerges as a dung beetle, which should happen in the early spring, I suppose. My guess is one of the first thunderstorms. Somehow the thunderstorms are a trigger for a lot of things to pupate, from the pupa to adult. It's that sort of signal to them, especially things that are underground, or like a lot of the dung beetles that are encased in a big thick ball of clay and dung. It's that trigger for them to break free because there's moisture around, there's food around, the temperatures are right. It's nature's sort of alarm clock, as it were, that spring has arrived or summer has arrived, and it's time to come out as an adult and let your reproductive system guide you rather than your digestive system. But that's a long story, and maybe a story for a little bit later or another time, one of those remarkable creature stories. But we're talking about leopards, and later on in the morning, after we'd seen all these leopard tracks, I decided we were going to head back towards Gowrie Dam after we'd done a little bit of a drive, because Henry had, from one of the guides from Vuyatela, had seen some tracks heading down into that drainage line, which is just south of Gowrie Dam, off of Twin Dams Road. And as we were coming up towards Gowrie Dam, a scrub hare, in the middle of the morning, of all times, ran out onto the road. But it was so alert. The ears were straight up. It was standing very, very erect, for want of a better word. And the only way, or rather the only thing that came to mind for me at the time was that this was a scrub hare that had been disturbed from its daytime sleeping place, and it had to have been a predator because of the alertness of the hare. The road, a little bit of a dogleg to the right, and as we were coming around the dogleg, I looked through some of the trees and I saw the leopard in the road, and it turned out to be Karula. And the very moment that I saw Karula, I saw one of the youngsters to my right, and well, we just had a fantastic morning as Karula and the two cubs crossed that open area below Inga's house, past Inga's house, onto what we call quarantine. The open area has nothing to do with quarantining anything anymore. It's a term that comes, or rather a name that comes from a long time ago. Excuse me, picking up a bit of a chest. And then we followed her as much as we could until it was time to leave her, when we were at that little mud wallow in the drainage line west of Gowrie Dam. But I'd say that has to be one of the highlights of our week this week, was seeing Karula and the cubs. So many people had been concerned about her and the cubs. We'd had a lot of lion around. There was just a lot of gaps in the time that we had last seen her. And it's not only us, but there are a lot of viewers out there that get very worried when we don't see Karula and the cubs, and everybody wants to know what's going on. It's very hard for us to tell you what's happening with them, because sorry, I heard a noise. I did ask the elephants to come by this evening, but they were a little bit far. They were up on Leadwood Road, and that's humans, not elephants. But they were a bit far, and then there were the two big males there. But anyways, let me get back to my story, and I can't remember where I was in my story. But we had a wonderful time with Karula. We also had a very, very interesting day today, and that was with the two male lions. And I was trying to upload some of the photos that I took today. I will do so. I'll put them on Safari Channel's page. I took a few photographs. Not many of them are very clear. This camera that I have takes wonderful macro stuff and just normal sort of panoramic scenes. But to try and zoom in on animals that are far away, it turns out very blurry and not a very clear picture. But I did get a couple of really nice shots of the faces of the two male lions that we saw today. And I would really like your help out there to help us identify them, because I think some of them, I think they are Majingi lions, from the Majingi lion group. I don't think that they're strangers. There's that one male that's got that very distinct scar on his nose, and the more I think about it, the more I seem to remember that there was one member of that pride, or rather that coalition of males, that had a very, very distinct scar over his nose. He's got some fresh scratches, and reading Pam's weekly updates that she sends us of all the cats and some of the activity, there was a scrap further down south, and it was between what looks like some of the Mapojos and some other males, and nobody really knows who it was. But with the scratches that he had, I'm thinking that he did come into contact with another lion. The strangest thing is that his brother, the other one that was limping, the darker maned lion who was limping, didn't show any signs of any fighting. And only thing with him was that he was limping. But we left them sleeping next to some buffalo this morning. And now we went on a drive this afternoon. We're not going out in the afternoons at all at the moment. But this afternoon, I think it's the first time in weeks that we were out in the afternoon. It was because we were just getting a few promo shots. We were putting together a promo, and we were just putting a few shots together. And there were some elephant up on Leadwood Drive, or Leadwood Road. And we went up to Leadwood Road to see if we could just have elephants in the background while I was doing a piece to the camera for the promo. And while we were doing this, we heard buffalo and lion having a little bit of a scuffle. And there were no game drive vehicles around at the time. So we managed to find our way almost to the very spot where we left them this morning. And we found that that one male, the darker maned male, it was almost sunset. In fact, the sun had just set, so it was getting dark, it was getting cold. He seemed to be limping a little bit more, and I think that this little scuffle that they had with the buffalo at sunset must have had something to do with it. And a little while later, the other male arrived. It was very thick bush. It was very close to where we left them this morning. But nothing happened. They didn't take one of the buffalo. I guess I'm just reporting, and neither happy nor sad to report that they didn't get one of the buffalo. Happy for the buffalo, sad for the lion. What can I say? It's one of those sort of dichotomies in life that you want the lion to feed, but you don't want a buffalo to lose its life. But we left them. It was getting dark, and we had to make our way back here for Fireside Chat. And so we did. Other than that, I had some nice time with some of those elephants this afternoon. It was very thick bush. I'm trying to think. We had some wonderful sightings of the rhino this week as well, the crash of 5. But we were with 5 of them, and the young male who has the floppy ear, the one we call Ndlevani, he wasn't with them. So I'm quite curious because he's normally hanging around with that group. But having said that, the last time we saw the group, there were 6 of them, and I think he's probably just wandered off somewhere and he's not with that group of 5. I don't know where they went to, but we're hoping to find them soon. On another note, sorry, I get distracted. On another note, we went to the hyena den a few times this week and we didn't find them, and it was only, I think, today, if I'm not mistaken, or yesterday, that we found out that the hyenas have actually moved their den, and we're going to be going there tomorrow, unless we're distracted, because we were supposed to do that today, but we were distracted first thing with the 2 male lions that were close to quarantine, close to the open area, and there's a good chance we might be distracted tomorrow morning, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But I'm hoping that tomorrow morning, Monday morning, the start of our week, we can start the week with the hyena den, and we can go back to that hyena den on Zoe's Road, because it seems that they've moved back to that den on Zoe's Road. I'm trying to think, and maybe somebody can send an email when last it was that we had the hyenas at the den on Zoe's Road. I'm thinking it's about a year ago, if I'm not mistaken, that they were there. But they do move dens. I mean, when you think about it, you have a number of animals that are ranging around from really relatively long distances from the den, coming back every day. The cubs are out playing in the grasses and running back into the den. There is a build-up of parasites, a build-up of fleas, perhaps there's a build-up of mites. It happens with wild dog as well, who are denning in termite mounds. There comes a time when they have to move the den because of perhaps parasite infestation, perhaps because they're outgrowing it, perhaps because they're becoming too well known, their scent is becoming too strong, they need to hunt in a different area. There are a number of reasons why they will change den sites, and it's been that time now. I can't even think, for the life of me, I can't even think of how long they've been at that den that they've been at. Maybe I can get an email about that too. When we first saw them, when we first found them at the den on Philemon's Cut Line. It'd be nice to try and keep a tab on how long they stay at the den site, because I have to be honest with you, for us, every day blends into the next. We don't have Mondays and Tuesdays and Sundays and Fridays. Every day for us is a very similar day, and there are no days of the week. So for us to try and keep track of time is very difficult. It's difficult enough when you're working in the lodges, but you sort of helped a little bit because you have to look at a calendar because you know you got a certain number of guests coming in on a specific date, and so somehow the dates stick in your mind. But yeah, there's not really much that mark the days of the week or mark the days of the month. So for us, sometimes we'll sit in a meeting in the morning. We'll say, "Is it Monday today, or is it Tuesday?" And we'd find out that it's actually Thursday. But that's how life is when you're having every day as a fun day, and that a Monday can be thrown in at any possible moment. And those Mondays are the days when things maybe just don't go right. And, well, you can have 2 Mondays in a row, or you can have no Mondays at all. What else can we talk about? We've had some nice sightings of kudu, and the interesting thing about the kudu is that there have been some bulls with the female herds. I mean, it's been a long time since we've seen kudu females with kudu bulls. We normally see the kudu female group separate from the bulls, and that's what it is like for most of the year. And it's only really at this time of the year that we're likely to see the bulls with the cows, because it is now kudu breeding season. And as far as the hippos are concerned, they're moving around a lot. I noticed a couple of hippo in Twin Dams today when we were coming back from the line. I noticed that the numbers of hippo are changing between Buffelshoek Dam and Gowrie Dam. And I'm not too sure where that young hippo is, the one that was born here sort of just around the time of that storm. I think I'm kind of getting I normally don't get lost for words, but I'm sort of getting to that point now, and I'm hoping that maybe some of you have sent an email in and something will be whispered in my ear. And yeah. Anyways. Laura. Hello, Laura. Laura's in Portugal, and Laura's asking about that lioness that was stalking us when Becky was on camera with me. And we were with that group of lionesses from us. I believe the Talala Pride. That's another thing I forgot to mention, is that we had them here. We had 3 groups of lion here on Djuma Game Reserve. I don't know if it was this week or last week. See, as I say, we have no concept of time here. But Laura's asking that young lioness that was stalking us on the vehicle, would she do that with another vehicle? I don't know. I've said many, many times, it's very, very hard to get inside the mind of these animals and try and predict what they might do, or talk about what is going on in their heads and what they might do behavioral-wise, because they are not automatons. They are not animals that are on a clockwork kind of robotic, genetically driven activity. They are thinking, they are emotional, they have personalities. I have no idea whether she will try that again with another vehicle. I don't think there was anything malicious in what she was doing. I think it was more of a game than anything else. I don't even think we can really call it stalking, other than maybe just trying to create a game. I honestly can't really tell you excuse me, I can't really tell you what her motivation was in doing what she was doing. Just that it was necessary for me to discourage her, just to turn around and shout at her, hey, and just to stop her from, her head was low, her ears were flat, she was sort of looking at Becky. I don't think she would have lunged, I don't think she would have pounced, but it was, I just felt at the time, funnily enough, twice in that morning, felt it was necessary for me to just make her know that, or make it known to her that what she was doing wasn't acceptable. And the human voice is actually a very, very strong deterrent. And there have been so many times that I've been out on foot with lion and had a mock charge from a lion. In fact, I don't know if it was a mock charge. A lot of the time I've had a lion rushing at me and just shouting at them stops them. And I don't know whether it's the shouting at them that stops them or whether they intended to stop at the time. But the human voice is a very, very powerful weapon that we have. No other animal has the range of sounds and perhaps the kind of volume that we have. And there are some instances and some occasions when our voice can save us. And I guess there's sometimes also that our voice is no good. I think from what I've heard about buffalo, when you shout at a buffalo, it just makes them more angry. But I've never, funny enough, touch wood, I've never been in that situation to test that theory. But certainly with lion and leopard and elephant and being on foot with these animals many, many times over, the sound of the human voice does act as a deterrent, or it discourages their behavior at the time. So it's hard for me to comment on what her intentions were. I wish I could get inside the minds of these animals and try and read them better. I can read their behavior, and I'm quite proud of the fact that I can look at an animal and I can say, well, especially when it comes to the cats to some degree, after they've been sleeping, and I can watch an animal on the ground and I can say, okay, well, it's going to be standing up now, and a minute later or 30 seconds later it stands up, because I know those movements, I know that body language that is getting ready to become active. With elephants as well, there's certain things that I know about their behavior that I can, to some extent, predict what they're about to do. I'm not all right all the time. One can't be right all the time. A lot of it is all unpredictable. But there are some behavioral traits that one can learn and one can get familiar with certain body language things and certain signals that you know what is coming next. And that's why it's easy to sometimes foresee what the animal is going to do next. And that is important in getting the camera in the right place and getting the best shots for you. But having mentioned those lion, they were actually found this evening. They were up on Sandy Patch, and the last that I heard, they were up on Albury's Road. So there's a good chance that tomorrow morning when we leave for drive, there's a good chance that we're going to take a look up Hoyatela Access Road and Albury's Road before we go around to the hyena den, because I think I've been promising to take you to the hyena den for some time now, and well, we're going to take a look and see where those lionesses went. That old lioness with no tail, who we call BB, and her 4 sub-adult grandchildren, I suppose we could call them, those 4 lionesses. Be interesting to see where they went, because I think this is the northernmost reaches of where they travel, and I doubt whether they were going to go any further north of Buffalo's cut line. But there are also those 2 male lions. When I last heard, as we were sort of settling down for Fireside Chat, I was listening on the radio. Excuse me. I was listening on the radio, and it sounded like they had left Leadwood Road and they had gone up to Cheetah Cut Line and they were heading up towards Torchwood. So I don't think there's going to be much chance that we'll see them, especially if they were on Cheetah Cut Line and they were heading towards Torchwood. And it makes it all the more special of what we did today. We're spending so much time with them, and I'm hoping that you were with us as well. I'm just going to pause for a second and see if anybody else has sent in a question, because I'd like to involve a lot of you in our Fireside Chat this evening. Lynn, and a question about the hyena den. I think Lynn is saying the last time we had the hyena den on Zoe's Road was August 2009. Was it that long ago? And that's almost 2 years ago. I suppose it's quite possible, because after the hyena den was on Zoe's Road, the next time we found a hyena den, which was a considerable time later, it was on Mvubu Road. We haven't seen the hyena den active on Cheetah Cut Line, that one right on the top of Cheetah Cut Line. There was a time when they seemed to be active around Battalier Road, where those pans are between Battalier Road and Nyala Road South. They were quite active there. We thought they might be denning there for a while. And then, of course, the den was found. So interesting that it was August 2009 on Zoe's Road. As far as the growth of the cubs are concerned, well, we'll see tomorrow. And join us for the drive tomorrow, and we'll have a look at how much they've developed in the last couple of weeks since we last saw them on Philemon's Cut Line. the one thing that I did notice the last time I was on site with them at the den was that the cubs that we saw, or that we have been seeing at the den off of Philemon's cut line, were all there, but they were already getting fairly large and already getting their spots. But while we were there was one cub that was very, very dark, very much smaller, and I hadn't been to that den for a while, and it seemed to me that that cub must have been a fairly new cub, which means that maybe there were 3 females that had given birth, because the last time I'd been at the den, I think there were 4 cubs, two of one size and 2 of another. But I'm not too sure about that. And well, we're going to spend some time at the den, and as soon as we manage to get there, and if the cubs are all out of the den and everybody's playing, I think let's spend some time trying to ascertain sort of ages and sizes, and maybe who belongs to who, if we're lucky. The fact that they are lying about might mean that the hyena, the hyena are going to be active and moving about quite a bit this evening. So I'm hoping that everybody's going to be there tomorrow, and I'd really like to get there tomorrow to have a look and try and build up some sort of idea of what is going on at the hyena den. Something's just come to mind, that just as we were starting to set up with Fireside Chat this evening, I could hear the guys coming back from their evening drive, and Henry was on his way back just before he got back to the lodge. He was crossing the dam wall and he found Induna. I think it was Induna. I asked him, he seems to think it was. I seem to think it was, because it was his tracks that we saw up and down on Philemon's cut line, or rather Philemon's dip junction with Quarantine near the Bushbrae site. And then we found Karula and the cubs, and I think he was around, I really do, and I think he hasn't really left the area very much. Karula, by the way, her tracks were seen near Buffelshoek Dam. Without the cubs, she'd been on walkabouts up near Buffelshoek Dam. She'd headed west from there, and then it turned in towards Hyena Road. It's another thing that we can look for tomorrow morning. But I'm wondering if any of you managed to catch Induna with the dam cam, whoever was zooming this evening, whoever was the zoomy in control this evening, whether you managed to find Induna at the dam. Would have been around, I suppose, 6:15 or so, just before we started our drive. Maybe time for 1 or 2 more questions before we're going to sign off this evening. Fire's getting low. We need to kick up the coals a little bit if we're going to be cooking on it. This is what happens in this cold weather, is that the fire doesn't really burn very strongly. So let's see if anybody else has come through with a question or so. Hello, Phyllis. An interesting question. It's a question that a lot of us have pondered, actually. Do I think that Karula is raising her cubs in a different part of her territory than Mission Induna to keep them away from Mission Induna? Well, I think, based on the fact that we haven't seen Mishu for a long time, I think we can successfully say that he has maybe found himself a little niche somewhere away from this area, and he's probably, and with a little bit of luck, and hopefully he's establishing himself a little territory, and he's fairly settled. I think Induna is not very settled, and it might have something to do with the fact that Karula is where she is. But if I have to think about it, I can't think about it. You know, I don't know. I'm drawing a blank. In terms of the part of her area that she's raising these 2 cubs, it is definitely the core of this area tends to be a lot more to the west, whereas with Mission Induna tended to be more to the central area of our traversing range. Reasons why could very strongly be because of Mission Induna, or the fact that Induna is still around. Especially also, she hasn't made her way with these cubs, as far as I know. She hasn't taken these cubs as far east as Cheetah Cutline. So I think it has something to do with Phyllis. I think it's got something to do with Mission Induna. I think it's also got something to do with encouraging the cubs to when they reach maturity and when they reach the age that they're going to be leaving her. I think this has got a lot to do with encouraging them to utilize that area more, so that not so much that there's conflict now, but more so that there's no conflict when they are maybe 18 months to 2 years old and the other youngsters are still around. I think that's more or less what it is that she's got to get these cubs familiar with a particular area so that they can be comfortable on their own when they start hunting on their own, in the same way that she did with Mission Induna. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't here with Saseka and Tingana, so I'm not too sure which areas she covered with those two. But it would be nice to sort of correlate all this information, try and put together a sort of a pattern between the areas that she covered mostly with Tingana and Saseka, and then the areas that she covered with Mission and Duna. If we sort of think about the general sort of predominant areas that she was in, excuse me, chest's not too good at the moment. But if we think about the areas that she's spent most of their formative years teaching them, this is a different area to Mission and Duna, and I'm wondering how different it is to Tingana and Saseka. And it would be nice to put all three together and try and paint a picture of what her motivation is and where these leopard have gone once they've left her and once she's started with the new litter. Because I think that will give us a better idea to be able to formulate an idea of her motivation. Just a thought. Sorry, getting rather chilly, and time is running out. And I want to thank you for joining me this evening. And hopefully we'll see you first thing in the morning, 6:30 Central African time, for our morning safari. We have some exciting things to look for, and I'm hoping that we'll get to the hyena den without any distractions. But my name is Mark, and I'm distracted easily, very easily. In fact, I think you're lucky that it's winter, because I'm not as distracted as I am in summer with all the insects and frogs and things. So there's a good chance we can maybe make it to the hyena den tomorrow. So thanks for joining me. Becky's been on camera and Craig in final control, and this has been our Fireside Chat on a Sunday evening. Goodbye, everyone.